answered earlier, because it's a good question, and it's probably the number one or number two. I got metal all over me. Number one or number two question that I probably get the most, which is, okay, then if you're so smart, where should I put my money? And I answered the question, where it's just pointing out that you have to ask yourself, why do you need to keep putting your money anywhere? And there is an illusion that has been sold to people for a long time in this country, and it's been the idea of passive income strategy, sit around, do nothing, just collect a check. These are things that a handful of people, right, they can't really even explain. Like, if you were to try and duplicate what they did, you couldn't do it in most cases, the vast majority of cases, because in a lot of cases, it had the reason they were able to pull that off is because at a specific time there were maybe a bunch of banks that were competing with each other, for example, and they were lending out to anybody who walked through the door. This is the case in the 80s and the 90s. There's a reason why all that M&A mergers and acquisitions took place in the 80s and 90s, is because many of these banks failed. Right now, we didn't call them failures, right? What would happen is that a bigger bank would just swallow them. That's what would happen, and that's why you're seeing bank failures now, is because some of these banks are getting quite large, and this is where of course you get the idea of so-called too big to fail, right? But a lot of banks were lending a lot of money, because banks make money pretty much one way, and that's lending money out, and there are not enough profit opportunities to really do this, right? And so the banks would do these deals, and that's why these people were able to buy up a lot of rental real estate, shit like that. Well, as time goes on, they can't, you can't do that same kind of thing. So it falls into the category of just kind of luck. Now, it's not to say that you didn't work hard. I mean, but then again, like, lots of people work hard every day, and they don't sit on a beach and earn 20%. Right, and they work hard they work just as hard as you, right? So it really does come down to sort of a selective enforcement kind of thing. If you can get money, if you have access to dollars cheaper than the next guy, you will make the spread. Meaning that you will make the spread between your cheap dollars and their slightly more expensive dollars. Okay, this is the system that is set up, and it's designed to create inflation. I've gone over this in my earlier work. If you go back into YouTube, and you'll find all the original series that I did, where I explain exactly how that mechanism works. This creates your inflation. Inflation is just the devaluation of your currency. So your currency ends up not having spending power, which is of course why everybody wants to, like, well, where do I put my money so I can make money with it? You shouldn't have to make money with your money. You understand? You should be able to save your money, right? In either a savings account or just in a coffee can in the backyard. You should be able to do that, and you should be able to maintain your spending power. You can't, because of the currency. Okay, that is the problem. Remember, mankind has three major problems, but there's two that are right at the front line. One is government, the other is giant corporations. They are effectively the same thing. Remember, I said, if you follow my work, you saw my video, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 days ago, something like that. Internet time, it's like 6 years, but in reality time, it's like 6, 7 days ago, where I said, what difference does it make to be a slave to a giant corporation versus a giant government? You're still a slave, right? You understand? Like, it really doesn't. In the final analysis, it really kind of doesn't matter. But no, governments will take care of you better. No, they will not. History has said otherwise. I mean, you can look at Maoist China, you can look at the former Soviet Union, and the mass unaliving that took place, and that is all historically documented. And that's because government doesn't treat slaves the same way, because, well, you're just one of the unwashed masses. We can always get more slaves, as we're seeing in the U.S. right now with wide open borders. They can clearly get more slaves. They just open the borders up and send a bunch of people in here, subsidize them for a little while, and then they effectively outbreed everybody else. Right? That's just a fact, right? I mean, like, this isn't my opinion. You understand? This is just what's going on. Like, I'm just Like, this should be boring to you because this is what's going on in front of you. So does it really matter? No. Well, who controls most of the big government? And because I said there was three, and big corporations. Well, that would be the bankers that loan big corporations and government money, right? It's the same people. It's always been, every single time. You can go back through history. Anytime you have a group of people who have control of the money supply and can dilute the money supply with cheaper metals, for example, in the case of gold, the Roman Empire, a bunch of bankers and the Roman Empire, went out and stole from everybody, ripped everybody off. Okay, so we have this same, we have this, SSDM, same shit, different millennium, right? I mean, like, it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. A dying empire, the United States, the former United States, dying empire. We're not talking about, the Jeffersonian style republic. We're not talking about that. We're talking about this corporate disaster, this government and corporate hybrid disaster that is controlled once again by a bunch of rapacious bankers that have lent out a bunch of so-called money to giant corporations and giant government to try and buy everything up. This is why you have a problem with means of production. You're supposed to actually own your means of production, right? Not the state and not some giant corporation. You're supposed to own your land. And I've been over this and over this and over this. Like, you don't want. It's why I'm always mystified by the political right. The people on the right, that don't seem to understand that, like, dude, you don't want a nation of renters, but yet you're creating the circumstances to have a nation of renters, but then you piss and moan at them because they vote like a bunch of crazy leftists. Well, it's because you've turned them into a bunch of crazy leftists because they don't own anything. Because we all kind of know historically, if you're a leftist when you're 19, but when you're 29, you kind of get your shit together because, you got bills to pay and you have a home to deal with and you've got a family and kids. Well, if you don't have a home, a family, kids, and shit to do when you're 29, you're still a leftist. You kind of see what the problem is here. So you guys piss and moan about all this stuff, and it's like, dude, you have infantilized, a bunch of men, two generations now of men into their fucking 40s, telling them that, well, what are you going to be when you grow up in your mid 30s, right? I mean, like, this is ridiculous. So this is the way to think about this stuff. So there's a lot here, and you shouldn't have to keep constantly trying to keep your head above water. You should be able to own your means of production, own your land, your farm, your house, etc. And in so doing, then you own a piece of the country. And if you have a hard currency, well, then it's very difficult for anybody to really rip you off. I've said this for a long time. If you want to get rid of the bankers, brokers, boomers, and billionaires out there, if you guys, especially all you leftists out there who love to say, we need to get rid of the billionaires, you don't need to tax them. You don't need to do that. That's stupid. That's wasteful. You just need to have an honest system and an honest currency, and they will all go broke very quickly. Very quickly. Because they don't have any way to pay for any of this shit other than just a bunch of paper fucking garbage money, right? That's all they have is credit and notes of credit and money in the stock market, whatever the hell that means, right? Like I said, it's not worth anything until you take it out and start doing something with it. There's no utility value to it. Well, but I borrow against it. Yeah, that's the worst. That's exactly what bankers want you to do, is constantly keep borrowing. That's what creates all these fucking problems that you're in right now. So all of you guys out there that are up to here, right, and you're like trying to keep your head above water, that's because of all of this shit, right? You need to deal with the currency. And it is more important that people pay you, that you demand to be paid in a hard currency, than you to take your dollars and convert it to hard currency. There is a difference.